Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know that I'm standing between you and lunch, but there's no choice. I got to continue. Uh, just to shake you up, start with a different question. How many of you follow football here? Please raise your hands if you follow football. I should have asked the cricket question. But, right. A lot of things that I talk about in my slides here is not really about my personal opinion. I've collected it from different sources, from newspapers, from books, from people. So it is an international perspective that ways addressing what people are telling about and people are talking about. There are instances where I would mention my opinion that those are without the sources, and you can see that on the slide. So here are four countries. You know what's common between these countries? One is Spain, Germany, France, and Egypt. They all play football, right? Or they all participate in the Olympics. I need an answer. So what's common in these countries? They don't play cricket, yes. It's a good one. Is there anything that you are aware of which came in the recent times? Yes, they all had a problem with sprouts. So our friend earlier asked this question about disease surveillance. And that's the point that I'll be talking about. When you talk about international perspective, there are two different sections. One is countries that have disease surveillance and a foodborne illness investigation system. And the other side, we have countries that do not have a disease surveillance system or an investigative system. So when we are talking with countries about, which have a system, they have accurate data, like what we saw in the earlier slides, 76 million cases, and the US now has reported cases which are much lesser than that, and US also reports 3,000 cases of deaths from foodborne illness every year. In India, in Africa, in a lot of countries in Asia, we do not have the data. Even in Latin America, that's the same. So it's very difficult to talk food safety without really knowing what the problems are. But then, as I said, let's talk about what media is talking about and what people think food safety is all about in most countries around the world. Right. I'll tell you about the outbreak which happened in Germany in 2010, in 2011. So here's the chronology. On 2nd of May, German authorities reported an outbreak of bloody diarrhea accompanied with hemolytic syndrome. On 22nd May, Germans identified that there is an unusual situation. A lot of people are suffering from diarrhea, which is very, very unusual. And this again goes back to the disease surveillance system, which was able to tell them that there was an unusual trend. So they normally have around 1,000 cases of E. coli per quarter, but in this case, the trend was different. They could see a huge spike in the number of cases, and then the Centers for Disease Control and the EFSA were involved in tracing this. Right. What changed things was when they did the epidemiology, they identified, or the initial identification was that it could be tomatoes, cucumbers, or lettuce. Now, this led to a few other steps. So then they dissected the cucumber. So they were trying to find out what was in the cucumber. So they found that it was an E. coli strain, and it was sugar toxin producing, which was an outbreak, which was very common to that outbreak incident as well. And then they also found out that it was organic cucumbers from Spain that had E. coli. But then things didn't stop there. Anyways, on 26th May, after the identification, the EFSA announced that, along with the German official, that there is an alert for all the countries which said that it is identifying cucumbers from Spain and it has to be withdrawn from the market. Now, this led to a global approach. So people all around the world started talking about cucumbers, and most people start to ban cucumber. Russia was the first country to do that, and then a lot of other countries followed suit, including people in the Middle East. Dubai was also contemplating the ban. Luckily, we didn't. But anyways, this is the Spanish minister communicating risks to people, saying that it is safe to eat cucumbers, and you don't have to worry about E. coli in cucumber that's coming from Spain. Anyway, that's bad risk communication. But it also tells us that Spain really had a problem when a country started to ban cucumbers. And this just happened one day after the announcement from the German authorities. And this is the cucumber field in Spain. I mean, look at how people thrashed it out. It was millions and millions of euros that was wasted in a couple of days. On 4th June, the EU officials had allegedly been examining the data and indicated that an open catering event in a restaurant in Lübeck, Germany, was a starting point of the deadly E. coli outbreak. Now, the story was slightly changing. From what was a cucumber-related outbreak, the story was moving towards a restaurant which had a lot of people affected from the same food. So then the epidemiologists started dissecting that one, and then they found out that it was not really cucumbers. It was the fenugreek or the sprouts that really led to the illness. Now, this is the spread of the illness. So there's just a single distributor of seed who is giving fenugreek to all the restaurants there. So there are about 42 restaurants that use the same fenugreek. And you can see the blue dot there, that's in France. So from Germany, it went to France as well. And this is the cluster of the outbreak. So this is how it was designed to fail. So this is a clear indication of how globalization has changed things around, how a single supplier can harm so many people at the same time or a couple of months, and how difficult it could be to trace those. It took almost a month to find out that this was a real case and not just cucumbers from Spain or anything else. Anyway, if you look at the further reports, the EFSA says that it was the fenugreek seeds that were imported from Egypt in 2009, which was used up in 2011, that caused the illness. The EFSA also said that there is still a lot of uncertainty about whether it's the true cause of all the infections, as there are no current positive bacteriological results. So this shows how difficult it is to get and confirm an illness. With all the epidemiological evidence, it was still not confirmed that it was Egypt that was implicated. Anyway, there were huge repercussions in Egypt. People started banning Egyptian seeds after that. So after Spain, it was the Egypt's turn. Egyptian government definitely was unhappy about it. Risk assessments later showed that they couldn't identify anything that contributed to the outbreak. But look at the impact of this particular outbreak. 16 countries were affected. About 3,900 people were ill with E. coli 104, and this included 52 fatalities. And these are the 16 countries that were affected. You can look up at the slides later. And what happened is people really kept away from eating salads. So this is a picture of a kid trying Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts are not really fenugreek sprouts. What happened is one of my friends was saying he was in New Zealand and people really gave up eating all kinds of sprouts, not just fenugreek sprouts. So that's again how people perceive risk. So if you just tell sprouts, people are going to stop eating sprouts. If you just tell cucumber or salad, they just stop eating salads. So trade in several countries was affected, and it was a dead sale in salads. People in Dubai were worried that we could have some cucumber from Germany, which was going to kill us. So I said it's much more unsafe to drive on Dubai's roads than to eat a salad and die. But then you can't convince people on this. So farmers in Egypt, Spain, and a lot of countries in Europe were affected because of this. And this is really a shame. So you can see the goats eating cucumber. There were several photographs that you can pick up from the net on how bad the things were. Now, if you put in terms of money, that's 284 followed by several zeros. I don't know how many. It's I think 2.8 billion USD, as published in the Food Protection Journal. And the compensation amounts to Spain was around 227 million euros, which Spain rejected, in fact. And I don't know, I think the latest figure is something like 300 million euros. So from Europe, let's move on to the United States. So what's happening there? Now, I'm sure that people in India enjoy cantaloupes and melons, but in the US at this point of time, it's a scary thing. Everybody thinks cantaloupes are really dangerous. Yes, here's an important point. Like when you're putting a food in a country, you're also talking people. So what is bad in the US is not necessarily bad in India. Because we are addressing a different age group of people here. We are addressing a different risk here. So you can't compare these two things. So just keep it in isolation. Don't mix this up. But talking about the cantaloupe story, I'm talking about the one which happened in 2011, not the one which is going on now. So in 2011, the Colorado Department of Health found that there was a listeria outbreak. Again, this goes back to their system of surveillance, which showed that there is an increase in number of listeria cases. And then on September 5th, that was really quick. 3 days later, they identified cantaloupe from an ill person's home, and the PulseNet, run by the CDC, identified that the outbreak strain was actually in other states as well. So they picked up the common food, and then they confirmed that it was cantaloupe. On September 8th, they could identify or narrow down to all kind of cantaloupes that were distributed in the retail. So they contacted the FDA, and FDA confirmed listeria testing in several retail locations, and they also got the confirmation of illness from several people who ate the same cantaloupe, or same batch of cantaloupe, which came from the same distributor. So this was later traced back to Jensen Farms, and FDA took an action on the Jensen Farms. But this case was particularly interesting because this happened just like within a few months or few weeks after they had a certification audit of HACCP. So there was a huge question remaining how third-party certifications are going to ensure food safety. Do regulators have to do more of certification rather than giving it to third party? Is it really trustworthy to depend on a third party certification? But then that's a different perspective altogether. Right, in the epidemiology, this was quite different from other outbreaks. Most of us know that listeria is not normally affecting people who are healthy, but it affects people who are immunocompromised. In this, the ages of people who are affected ranged from 1 to 96. And look at India, like if you look at the life expectancy here, we are hovering around 64. And here we are talking about an outbreak that affected people who are more than 78 years old. So we don't reach there. Most ill people were more than 60 years old. And 33 outbreak-associated deaths were reported. And the average, or the median age was around 81 years. And 48% of the ill persons were female, which is like 50-50. Now, 7 of the illnesses were related to pregnancy, 3 were diagnosed in newborns, and 4 were diagnosed in pregnant women. Now, here's a classic example of how epidemiology can tell us how risky it is for the common man, or how risky things are for public, and where the controls are required. I mean, it's easy for me to tell that, all right, if you are a pregnant woman, you need to avoid certain foods. So when you have a data, that makes things much more easier, and that's exactly what US could do in this stage. Right, from the US, we need to move on to China. I will talk about a different scandal that happened in 2008. All of us are familiar with the melamine scandal. A lot of milk was thrown away. And this is how it happened in 2008. China reported an estimated 300,000 victims, with 6 infants dying from kidney stones and other kidney damages, and about further 680 babies hospitalized. This really shook the world because it was so unethical to believe that, or it was so unethical to know that a baby food or baby formula or infant formula could be affected with contaminants. Now, this is what the WHO said. It is one of the largest food safety events it had to face in the recent times. And the crisis of the confidence among Chinese consumers would be hard to overcome. Clearly, this is not an isolated accident, but a large-scale intentional activity to deceive consumers for simple, basic, short-term profits. Now, this is a big challenge that we need to overcome globally. Intentional contamination of food with chemicals, it's really huge. These are the countries that were affected with melamine. It's quite large spread. I think many countries banned milk from China because of the same reason. Now, from China to South America. In South America, again, several countries are part of it. They do not, most countries do not have a disease surveillance system in place. But as we know, South America is a major exporter of food. If you look at Brazil, they export 41% of the world poultry and slaughters about 5 billion poultry per year. Brazil and Argentina are the 2 countries which have a certain amount of standards, but the major problem there is that they do have the problem of double standards. That is, the internal standards for the country are quite different from the export standards. So they focus always on the country of export and produce foods for their benefits. So if you look at most of the outbreaks in the United States, they always trace it back to South America and blame the South Americans because it's easy to get them. But it's hard to respond for South America because their current systems are not really designed for the safety that US demands, but still a lot of exporting happens because of the clear demand for food in the United States. The retail sales are growing, but again, retail food safety remains a big challenge. There is a lot of education programs that's going on in South America. There are a lot of campaigns for consumer awareness, but retail food safety program still remains in their infant stage. So I think they have a long way to go in that sector. A major challenge, again, for South America is that almost all of countries have the responsibilities shared amongst several agencies. And this is not just true for South America. There are a lot of countries in the world which have the same problem, where food safety responsibility is not under single agency. This really complicates decision making, and it just slows down processes. And a recent initiative is a network of laboratories that's coming up in South America. That's the INFAL, Inter-America Network of Food Testing Laboratories. So they are coming up with an objective of streamlining processes or streamlining testing facilities and exchanging information in South America. In Africa, things are different. Almost 700,000 people die every year from food and waterborne diseases. And leading cause of waterborne diseases is cholera. And as we all know, cholera can be prevented if you just drink heat or heat-treated water. So it's a huge, water availability is a major problem, but still, there are small things that you can do to make water unsafe. So if we can reach people and tell them that, you just need to heat the water to make sure that water is safe, you can prevent a lot of diseases. But we can't reach people in these countries. It's so difficult. And a recent cholera outbreak cost them around 36 million USD. So these are valuable money that's wasted on helping people. So when you can prevent an outbreak, you could save much more. And if you look at Africa, the problem is that there are a lot of diseases that we say is not really life-threatening, like salmonella, hepatitis A, or EHEC. But we also need to understand that Africa has around 25 million people who have got HIV or AIDS. And these small diseases or these trivial diseases could really have a serious effect on people who are already immunocompromised. They have national programs, but only in South Africa, but most other countries do not have anything. This is a friend of mine who is in Africa. He sent a message to us last week saying that they are trying to start an African Association for Food Protection, which is trying to build statistics, and they're trying to work together with the government in helping them. So he's written to us for international support in helping us, helping programs in Africa. They are based out of Ghana, but they're trying to reach as many people as possible who can contribute to food safety. Right. We talked about these challenges, but how do you deal with them? What are the things that you can do to overcome these challenges? We need to look at whether really there is an increase of foodborne illnesses. We see a lot of action in the newspapers. We see a lot of people talking about it, but is the number really increasing? I think we need to look at a certain number of factors that contribute to the awareness in the recent times. One is people have increasing expectations. So we can see that in India, we can see that in the United States. Everyone wants absolute safe food. There is an increasing ability to detect hazards and sources of foodborne illnesses. So we have technology that's helping us to identify illnesses much better. So maybe, like if you look at 20 years back, we had the same number of chemicals which were used in the food industry, but we were not detecting it. But with more technology, with more testing facilities, we are able to detect far more than what we were. So the numbers may not be actually increasing. It's just that we are able to detect more chemicals and more microorganisms. We also have advancing food safety knowledge, so we are using risk assessment principles. And the role of media in reaching people cannot be underestimated. So that gives you a perception that really risk is increasing. But without the figures, it's hard to say whether there is an increasing risk. We also need to look at pathogens. They're also getting better. If you look at the E. coli strain in Spain, in Germany, they had the Shiga toxin producing gene, which they got from Shigella, and they are enteroaggregative, which helps them to stick to surfaces. These bacteria were found to be resistant to 14 antibiotics, so this is quite unusual. But we do not know whether there are more organisms which have got the same capacity. But we need to rethink on the use of antibiotics in farms. Are these contributing to the production of this bacteria, or are they contributing to these bacteria's capacity to hurt more people? But we also cannot eliminate the role of bioterrorism in Germany. We do not know. We also do not know that probably this was a much milder bacteria, but it could have affected so many people, and that was not detected. So we just got to know those ones which got really serious. And the most important thing is we need to think whether the risk outweighs the benefits of eating vegetables. So what did we gain by putting people off vegetables? So isn't there a risk involved in not eating vegetables? We need to eat and be healthy. So a lot of countries are investing a lot to tell people, eat your greens, eat your fruits. But at the same time, these food safety threats can really put people out of these foods. So you need to balance that. And if you're looking at a country like India, where there are a lot of facilities which do not even have facility to disinfect vegetables, we cannot say that there is an E. coli detected, so you keep away from vegetables. It's simply not possible. There's a lot of foods that we eat which are not heat treated. I'll just skip this, which I mentioned before. Right, limitations in testing. In Germany, they tested thousands of samples of sprouts and cucumber and lettuce, but they didn't find bacteria. And when they found the bacteria, it was just the wrong one. So there are limitations of testing. So if you do not test carefully, we are not going to know whether it's the right bacteria. It also talks about risk management principles. How are we going to communicate to people? And then the biggest question is, do punishments really work? I mean, we saw that in China. The officials were given very high punishments, but this was a New York Times article that came in June 2012. China's food safety problems still continue. So even with all these punishments, it says that these publicized food safety scandals represents only a fraction of unsafe food production practices. Hundreds of chemical food additives are pumped into the products, and Chinese people consume it every day. This was in June. So Chinese media still claim that there's rampant adulteration. And these are examples of how we do not learn from mistakes. So we all know that smoking is bad, but we still continue to smoke. So we don't just learn from mistakes. It's very difficult to make a behavior change. This is police in Dubai trying to stop speeding people. So with all the fines and all stuff, people still continue to speed. So it's not really easy to make a behavior change in people when it comes to food safety. And this is a classic example of how we continue to drive with cell phones. So, risk communication here. Everybody knows that it's dangerous to drive when you're speaking on the phone, but we still continue. All these campaigns, is it an awareness problem? It's not an awareness problem. We all have the knowledge, but it just doesn't convert into action. And look at how complicated food safety can be in international perspective. So this is a Cold Stone ice cream in Dubai, and it's got n number of ingredients. And how am I going to make this food safe? It's not really easy. Right, I just skipped these because some of these have been talked, but there are a lot of developments which are happening across the world. China is coming up with a new program. It is updating its food safety regulations. It's abolishing contradicting requirements. In Dubai, we are having new standards for GCC countries. We have a federal food code coming in. We have new shelf life requirements which are being reviewed from after 1982. We also have new code of practices for the industry, which is very important to tell people what exactly has to be done. We also have an online system for tracking food imports and exports. And we also look at, this is a snapshot. You can look up at the website later and find out what can be done. But with the last message, this is our first lesson in food safety. We learn from animals to know what food is safe and what food is not safe. We made our notes, we did our risk assessment, we started eating bananas. And look at what animals are learning. They're learning from us, and not always safe. So I just want to end up with a note that scientific thinking is responsible and for all these changes, but we also need to understand that science is different for different countries. If it is not different, how can genetically modified foods be unsafe in the UK and be safe in the United States? And both claim that there is food safety risk assessment in place. So how do you come to a conclusion? Food safety is a shared responsibility, and let's share it and let's take it forward. Thank you.